Alright class, for my third research project, I wanted to dive into the Viking art age and wanted to kind of just go into what the Vikings were and just clear some things up with that. So first thing to know that about the Vikings is that not all the Vikings were brutal killers that pillaged and raid. They were peaceful Vikings and they were warrior Vikings that fought to the death and glorified in it. The Vikings originally came from Scandinavia. They left their homelands to seek their fortune elsewhere, mainly Europe. To the Europeans, they were called Northmen or Viking. The Vikings that stayed and decided to settle on their land and farm were called Norsemen instead of Viking because the Viking was tied with being a brutal warrior that raided other villages and enslaved the captured. So the warrior spirit. The Vikings were fearless warriors that charged into conflict without hesitation and did not fear them losing their lives. They believed that if they died gloriously in battle, they would earn their place in Valhalla, which was a heavenly army in the afterlife. Since the Vikings were sea voyagers, they were always on the move, so they would pay homage to their gods by drawing on rune stones. These drawings would consist of godly figures, sea serpents, land animals like jaguars, or even dragon-like looking creatures. The Vikings would draw on these runestones to leave their mark on the land as they set sail to seek their new village to raid for riches, supplies, and even slaves. So the Viking longboats. Since the Vikings came from Scandinavia, or what we know today as Norway, they needed an efficient way of traveling the seas most safely and as fast as possible. As the Vikings started to meet their match against the British Isles, they turned to hit-and-run raids, where the objective was not to raid them for their supplies and riches, but to cripple their defenses so that they couldn't rebuild for a later raid. And this video kind of just talks about longboats and why they're so significant.
The Vikings came from Scandinavia, the three territories that we know today as Denmark, Norway, and Sweden.
Norway literally means the northern way, the northern sailing route, and it's one long coastline punctuated by fjords, while the land itself is broken up by mountains, so it's much easier to get around by boat than by land.
Forced into ships, they were quick to realize the possibilities.
I think they were very astute people, that they could see quite quickly, again through this maritime network that they had, that there was a much wider world out there. And I think it's probably one of the most important aspects of the Viking Age, that they were very much a people who looked outwards. They are exceptionally curious people and exceptionally brave in terms of where they want to go with their ships and why.
The Vikings had dreams of exploration and conquest. They needed a vessel to match: the longship. Remarkably, some still survive. This is a so-called Osberg ship, uncovered from a burial mound south of Oslo in Norway in 1904. It's now in the capital's Viking Ship Museum. It is the oldest Norwegian Viking ship.
So yeah, just to kind of go over that video, I like it because we kind of see what the longboats look in person, and from what they look like on video, they're massive. So the Viking settlement. During the 10th century, Vikings colonized Denmark, and this marked the Danish dominance. This was a powerful Viking settlement that marked the second Viking Age. Their raids were large-scale, more organized by royal leaders to hit the coast of Europe, mainly England, where the line of kings descended, like Alfred the Great. The Viking architecture wasn't brick buildings due to their constant movement, so they built their buildings out of wood and straw. Once they settled, they were able to create more detailed rune stones, recording their most successful raids and travels overseas. At the end of the Viking Age. By 1066, with Christianity taking over most of Europe, all of the Scandinavian kingdoms were Christian. This marked the end of the Viking Age. Whatever was left of the Viking culture was absorbed into the culture by Christian Europe. The Vikings did, however, leave a lot of their literature behind in today's Scandinavia, which could still be found today. And this is my works cited page, and thank you.